So I don't know, Rob, if you could explain very easily for our audience what did exactly happen. So what was going on in the previous years at Silicon Valley Bank that led to this situation now in a very simple way.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think try to simplify as much as possible. During the 2020 venture boom, VCs and startups piled their deposits into SVB. So in 2020, they had about 100 billion in deposits. That was up from 50 billion in 2018. And in 2021, those deposits had increased to about 190 billion. So they had this massive influx of deposits, which is obviously a boon for a bank in most cases. But with a bank like SVB, they couldn't reasonably lend those deposits out fast enough or responsibly enough. So in addition to their normal lending practices, they decided to park a sizable amount of these deposits in long-term government bonds that were at a fixed interest rate of 1.5%. And at the time, it seemed like, better to earn some return than none, right? The problem with it is it was a long-term bond, right? And so when the Fed started increasing interest rates over time in 2021 and so forth to try to stave off inflation, the value of their bond portfolio dropped. And when the value of their bond portfolio dropped, they had this sort of unrealized loss on their balance sheet. Now, normally that's not a problem because the bank normally doesn't have to realize the loss. They could just let the bonds mature. They would eventually get paid back more than they invested, and it wouldn't have been necessarily a home run investment, but it would have been fine, right? It wouldn't have been catastrophic. But anyway, so in parallel to all this, and this is really important because these things were happening kind of concurrently, right? In parallel to all this, startups were burning more than twice the amount of cash that they had burned historically, right? They weren't able to go out and raise new funds. They weren't able to go out and they had grown to the size that they were just burning cash like crazy, right? And so I think that's really where they create kind of this perfect storm where as the deposits started to drop, as the cash balances started to drop at the bank, the SVB eventually found itself in an unfortunate position of having to liquidate their bond position, realizing the loss, and trying to shore up the delta with capital from the private markets, from General Atlantic and the like. And I think once that happened in a hyper-connected ecosystem like SVB's in rapid succession, that's what created the catastrophic run.
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation, Rob.